Welcome back to the Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Ben Lou. I'm joined by co-host Blake Murphy. Blake, you got a cool shirt there.
I do. This is a hot girl basketball t-shirt. I also got the Pretty Girls Can Guard too. So Caitlin Cooper, our next guest, creator of Basketball She Wrote, took the Rick Carlisle quote of, you get tired of a pretty girl if she can't guard. Well, pretty girls can guard too. Caitlin, what's up?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the wonderful shirt.
I'm wearing the other one too.
There you go. I'm glad I chose the one that I did then. That would have been not awkward because we would have had to go like this for anyone to know we matched, but a little awkward. Look, All-Stars in your hood this weekend. How you feeling?
I'm excited. I mean, it's always good for All-Star Weekend because it actually falls over my birthday, and my sister's birthday. So it's kind of something that I always did as a kid growing up. So for it to be in Indiana is going to be really special for me to share that with her, and I'm looking forward to seeing everything going on. So especially with Tyree Halliburton as a starter, so all works out.
Happy early birthday to you and your sister.
Oh, thank you.
Are you going to the actual weekend itself, like the festivities and everything like that?
Yeah, I'm going to Saturday night. That was a different thing because they're going to be doing that at Lucas Oil, so they actually opened that up to Indiana residents. So nice that a lot of locals are going to be able to go to that one, but I'm not going to the actual All-Star game. That one was a little bit out of my price range.
Yeah, that part's tough. And if you want to bring your sister, you can't do the media pass thing. I want to run one thing by you, and I think you're too nice to actually do it, but I feel like in spirit you would dig it. So there's this court set up at the airport when you arrive right now. I feel like there should be, and I've maintained that there should be like All-Star Saturday night events that are not specifically related to your basketball skill. What I want to see is I want like fans to be able to hoop on that court, but there's like a player haters ball going on of like players commentating as fans play on that giant spacious airport court. I think that could be, well, not fun. It would be really mean, but it'd be funny.
Yeah, I mean, when they saw that they had erected that at the airport, I was like, are we cool now? Like, there's an actual basketball court at the Indiana airport, which, I mean, we do have a great airport, but now it's just all the much better.
Yeah, now we just need the reasons to get to the airport, which is All-Star Weekend. Also, potentially in the playoffs to see the Indiana Pacers. Let's pivot to the Pacers' actual basketball team. Last time we had you on, we were talking about, hey, the Pacers acquired Pascal Siakam. That's cool. What is that going to look like? Tyrese Halliburton missed a bunch of the first games. He has looked less than 100% in the last handful here since he's been back. But those caveats aside, how is this working out so far? How does the Pascal Siakam fit look?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that stood out the most, and I won't go into the actual like nitty gritty X's and O's machinations of it, but when they played, it would have been, I think, his second or third game when they were in Phoenix. They were running a sideline out of bounds play, and he was the inbound passer, and you could tell that he didn't know what the play was. Like Andrew Nemhard was having to communicate to him, like, hey, you're going to run across, then we're going to do this. I think that Obi Toppin ended up scoring on that play. I don't exactly remember, but Pascal had 31 points in that game, and he didn't know the plays. Like, you could tell that they hadn't even had a practice with him. They had to input all of their offense, and that's just how organically he's able to find his spots within what the Pacers are doing. So I think offensively, it's been better than I expected, because even with Tyrese being out, he was seeing a lot of extra coverage in a couple games, especially against Denver, maybe one or two other teams that were really showing him some double coverage because they didn't have as much shooting out on the floor. But he's able to come to his points, like I said, just really organically, where he can come up and set a touch screen. If they get a mismatch, he's going to go into a bully drive. He fits right into what they want to do in transition because he puts in so much early work. I made a joke and said, like the early bully gets the ball, that he's going to get down there, set a seal, and they're going to be able to give it to him. So a lot of what they're hoping to do on that end of the floor, I think, has been pretty seamless. And there's probably one or two moments every game where I'm like, wow, I get to watch this guy play basketball, especially because like the pairing with he and Miles Turner, I don't think Miles has ever had somebody with Pascal's skill set in terms of, it's been pretty easy over his career that whoever's out there in the front court with him, typically they'll cross match the five onto that player and guard Miles with the smaller player. Miles has grown as a post-up threat, but that's still what a lot of teams will do. And when the Pacers played the Sixers with Pascal, they did that. They put Embiid on Pascal, and Pascal was like, oh, you know what? I can snatch back and I can get around the edge of the defense and finish at the rim with my left. And by halftime, they had flipped that matchup around. So now Embiid's on Miles, and Pascal's like, oh, I'll just drive at Embiid. You're going to help on my drive. And now Miles is shooting a three. So in terms of Miles being somebody who actually gets to be a five, who's defended by fives, same thing with Kristaps Porzingis. You can see a lot of times where Pascal's, start, stop, making Porzingis have to chop his feet in space, and then they didn't want to have that matchup anymore either. So a lot of things like that where he can be very versatile offensively and plugged into plays in a lot of different ways. Defensively, I think it's a little bit more of a mixed bag.
Okay, we'll talk about the defense in a second. But yeah, offensively, I mean, that's for Pascal. He's always wanted to play with, a stretch five. And I think that, he asked for Miles Turner in particular. If Miles would come to Toronto, well, he got his wish. At least he got Miles Turner. It's just now in Indiana. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers right now. He's shooting 62% from two. Pascal is since going to the Pacers. He's shooting 42% from three, which is always a nice sign for him. Free throws are a little bit more inconsistent for him. I'm wondering, I guess you haven't seen it as much because, we haven't seen like the best of Tyrese Halliburton on the court just yet since the injury. But how are is there like a sign of a two-man game forming between him and Pascal? Like, how are their two ecosystems like overlapping?
Yeah, to this point, they've still played, I think, less than 200 minutes together.
Okay.
And in part, like even in one of the games they did play, and I would compare it to like a Mr. Potato Head with like the arm in the eye socket and the eye stuck to the foot, because the Pacers were trying to rearrange what Tyrese's minutes restriction was going to be. So Tyrese actually came off to the bench so that they could play him in the fourth quarter, and the lineups were just all over the place. So there's been a lot of, rotational stuff that has made it so that they haven't played a ton yet together. But that being said, it's interesting because they kind of just exist in separate spheres to a degree. Because there's not been a lot of Siakam inverse pick and roll. Like, I think Tyrese has only set 4 screens for him so far. And in part, that's because Tyrese isn't a super physical screener. And then on the flip side of that, Pascal's set, I think, around 40, 45 picks for Tyrese, but they don't go to it a ton because, like, even the other night in Charlotte, like, Pascal's being guarded by Miles Bridges. If he goes and sets a screen for Tyrese, that's just getting him a screen against, a tougher wing defender, rather than if you have Miles set it, then maybe he gets a switch against a big, or, you're going to hunt the weakest defender somewhere else. Pascal's usually being guarded by one of the toughest people. So it's a little bit harder to run just specific two-man game actions for them unless, like I said, it's like a quick touch screen coming out of the corner so that Pascal can get Tyrese's guy and maybe go into a post up. And I think that's probably where you see their chemistry a little bit more. Like if Pascal's in the post and then you can have Tyrese run a split action above that, that's great because Tyrese's defender is not going to sag off of Tyrese and go double Pascal. Like typically that defender, like if you set a flare for Tyrese off of a post entry pass, that defender is going to go with Tyrese, and now it's just an easy isolation for Pascal. Or sometimes they'll do like a quick slot to slot flip at the top of the key, and then a screen isn't being involved, and that lets Pascal get downhill with his strong hand. But that's kind of, it's going to be interesting to watch because Buddy Hield could have acted as a bridge between the two of them, I think, because Buddy's a better screener than Tyrese. Buddy can set inverse screens, be a stack screener potentially for Pascal, and Buddy can also screen for Tyrese and be a ghost screener. So in terms of that connective tissue between them, I think they're going to miss that a little bit.
So I want to come back to the Buddy Hield trade in a minute because I have some thoughts on it, and I wonder if your thoughts line up with that. But on the Pascal front, on the defensive side, so I watched the first couple games as much as I could when he got there, and it looked like he was being given, this was when Halliburton was out and Buddy Hield was still there. He was being given the main assignment, guarding KD some in the Suns game, and at least one-on-one, he looked like we saw in Toronto, which was, it wasn't the level it had been a couple years ago, but he wasn't bad. And then you sent me a couple clips yesterday, and then I started watching some more recent Pacers defensive tape last night because most of the interesting games ended up being blowouts around the NBA. And it looks less good, at least in like screen navigation and help principles and stuff like that. And I guess given what we've seen from Bruce Brown in here in Toronto so far, like, is the theory here that just Indiana is where defense goes to die?
I'll be interested to find out. I want to see more of Bruce tonight and see what he's looking like for the Toronto Raptors because, yeah, what you brought up there against Phoenix, I think that's a good way to put it because you could tell earlier on that they were really experimenting with exactly how they wanted to use Pascal. So in that game, they had him start out against Devin Booker. I wasn't super fond about that matchup, and I don't think they were either. So they flipped it around. He was doing some on Grayson Allen, and they were kind of seeing if he could be a backline sweeper until they eventually were just like, let's not overthink this. Let's go ahead and put him on Kevin Durant. And I was impressed in those few games, especially a few where they didn't play with Miles because they needed to go smaller and had Pascal at the 5. And there were some possessions that I clipped from them. Like, wow, this guy's rotating like really quickly. The small ball lineup was effective for them. And then, like you said, over these last few, it's tough to exactly pinpoint what's going on there because against Houston, they had him playing off ball. He was kind of in a no man's land where he wasn't really helping and he wasn't really covering the shooter either. And then in Charlotte, there was a lot of slippage there. That's a bad loss for the Pacers to give the Charlotte Hornets their 12th win of the season, regardless of the fact that the Hornets added some shooting. Just a lot of screen navigation issues where he's not getting over the top, or he's just running into contact on flare screens and pin downs. Then also like closing really hard to Miles Bridges' left hand and not being able to recover when Bridges would attack with his right, which I mean, Bridges is a left-handed player, but still not being able to get back in front. When the Hornets went 5 out and played small to close that game over the last 6.5 minutes, they couldn't stay in front. Also, like a lot of 4-5 actions between he and Miles where like the switch or stay communication wasn't there. Rollers were getting loose. So the Pacers are going to need him to step it up defensively. I think they probably need to make some adjustments too, because like if you look at guys like Giannis, if you look at Evan Mobley, they're not great screen navigators either. There's a reason why Giannis gets played off ball and gets used more as a roamer, and that's where he excels, because it's very easy to screen bigger guys out of action. So I think that the Pacers probably need to be a little bit more active with him just being used as a switch defender. Don't be putting him on movement shooters like Davis Bertans, where he's going to have to navigate those types of screening situations either. And probably they just need to keep tinkering it. And hopefully after the All-Star break, and I'm also hopeful tonight that maybe being back in Toronto will spark some more of what we saw in like the first, 5 or 6 games of what Pascal was showing defensively, because they need him to turn it up on that end of the floor. Just being honest on that front.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did see a little bit of that in Toronto as well. Like, I think to start this season, I thought he was okay, but as the season went on, it was like his defense was dropping off more and more. And I think that, I don't know, there were lots of moments where Pascal like stands out defensively. Like the Raptors used to always put him on quicker point guards, for example. This is like way back in 2018 now, but like Raptors are playing Washington in the first round. They're like, okay, we need someone to guard John Wall for a while. How about you do a Pascal? And Pascal had the quick feet and the length. But I think the reputation, has started to come off and off a little bit more. And I think that, yeah, I do wonder how much of it is age related, how much of it is like contract year related. Like, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, I think Indiana was looking for a two-way player. And I think offensively, getting everything you would ever really want. But defensively, I think there needs to be more of a step there. But I mean, I don't know. Pascal's not the kind of guy to like be a stopper or carrier.
No, not a stopper, but
better than he is right now.
Yeah, some of the team level stuff. And honestly, I think, and again, Caitlin would have a better read on this, but like the actual one-on-one stuff has been better than the like, oh, I got to float through a couple screens here, or I'm stuck between, helping and staying on my weak side guy. Okay, so the Buddy Hield trade that we can circle back to here. Caitlin, we didn't talk to you about it after the trade deadline. And for anyone who missed it, the Pacers sent out Buddy Hield to the Philadelphia 76ers for 3 seconds and Marcus Morris. They then attached one of those seconds to Marcus Morris to get Doug McDermott from San Antonio. So basically, Buddy Hield for Doug McDermott in a couple seconds. Why did they do this? Because the Pascal trade is a win-now trade. And yes, with the option to re-sign him in the offseason, and Buddy Hield's also a free agent. But, right now, this trade makes them worse at a time that they just made a win-now move.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel a little bit incongruent. I think it goes back to the business of basketball. I know that Jake Fisher reported it, and it's similar to what I've heard. I think that the Pacers gave him a pretty fair contract extension number to start the season, and it got reported at the time that Buddy wanted to test that and see if he could potentially get a better deal. And I think that the Pacers felt like it was pretty likely that they weren't going to retain him. So at the risk of, not losing him for nothing, that was the deal that they made. And I think they realized they still needed a movement shooter, hence why they went and got Doug McDermott. But Buddy and Doug McDermott are very different movement shooters. I have quite a bit of experience of watching Doug the last time that he was here. And Doug is more of the movement shooter who's going to play very well in two-man game with a guy like Sabonis, because he rise and fires out of handoffs. He comes off of screens. Buddy's more a movement shooter of, I'm going to sprint to the line and transition. I'm going to screen for Tyrese Halliburton and be a ghost screener and slip out into space and be very savvy with whether I'm going to actually hit and hold contact or I'm going to leak out. And then also just sliding up and down the three-point line. And he and Tyrese has played with Buddy his whole career. They know each other like the back of their hands. So it's a loss. Like I said, the connective tissue that would have potentially been there. And I guess it should have been an early sign. I made a joke about this on a Knicks podcast last week, that the fact that Buddy had only set 8 screens for Pascal probably should have been my first clue that this partnership wasn't going to be super long, because Buddy was being guarded by Jalen Brunson at the end of that Knicks game that they lost in the fourth quarter. And they didn't even look at that. They didn't even look at inverted pick and roll to get Pascal downhill against Jalen. They were doing the reverse and having Pascal set screens for Andrew Nemhard, which was just putting you guys are familiar with. Precious Achua's switchy defense on the ball against Andrew Nembhard. So that's out there. And like, I do think it'll be an adjustment. Doug hasn't shot the ball super well yet. He's capable of making some of the shots that they're getting in, but I think it is, like you said, it's in the immediate, it's going to be a downgrade, and Buddy's already helping the Philadelphia 76ers, and they're ahead of the Pacers in the standings right now. So definitely going to be something to watch.
Will, you expecting Doug McDermott to do Doug McDermott against the Raptor things tonight?
Doug McDermott has been a certified Raptor killer. As a member of the Bulls, as a member of the Pacers, as a member of the Spurs.
Yeah.
Let's hope. That would be good for the Pacers. They need to go into the All-Star break with a win.
You don't understand. The Raptors also need this win, all right? Because I think narratively for the franchise, it'd be really good if Scottie took over and just like won this matchup, and it was like, this is why, the Raptors pivoted to this new direction. But I mean, putting that aside, I watch a lot of Pacers games as well, and the guy who keeps catching my eye is Aaron Nesmith. I don't know. I guess I haven't like mentally adjusted to the fact that he's like a scorer now, and in addition to the energy that he puts out on defense. But yeah, talk to me about his role in all of this, because he's kind of stepping up almost to me as like a number 3 behind these the top 2, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one person where for a lot of the season, it wasn't clear who would be in the closing lineup for the Pacers. You knew for the most part it would be Tyrese and Miles, but who are the other 3 people going to be? And in some regards, that was a good thing, because it's like they have a lot of adaptability, a lot of versatility in terms of who they could put out there, but also like, who else were you going to count on definitively in those situations? Now they have Pascal. He's going to be out there. And Aaron, I think, had solidified himself and kind of separated that, like, this is somebody we want out there for the reasons you just said. He's going to play at 100% no matter what. If it's a Monday night in Charlotte ahead of the All-Star break, Aaron Nesmith's still going to play really freaking hard, because that's just who he is as a player. And obviously he shot the ball a lot better this season as well. I think that they've adjusted with him a little bit as what he does as a hop step shooter, and that's helped him. And he's shown that he can do a little bit more off of movement. He's leaked out as a screener and hit some shots. He's slid along the 3-point line into passing windows and made some shots as well. So he's somebody that's definitely takes some steps forward for them. I think that in part, not completely, but I think his insertion into the starting lineup, because they had put Jalen Smith at the 4. They were playing bigger before they acquired Pascal. That Aaron being out there is also partially why Andrew Nembhard is starting, because there was a 2-game stretch where Aaron was guarding Jalen Brunson at the point of attack, and he fouled out. And then in the next game, he fouled out trying to guard the opposing point guard again. So he's somebody defensively that, like, he can be a foul machine. Like, he wants to play with contact.
Yeah.
He's going to pressure full court, so he picks up fouls. By putting Andrew Nembhard out there, now they can put Andrew Nembhard, who's pretty sticky at the point of attack, and take on some of those assignments. So maybe Aaron isn't getting into quite as much foul trouble.
Yeah. Well, Nembhard was one of the pieces I would have loved seeing come back to Toronto in that Pascal trade, especially because the Raptors could have needed more depth there. I don't know. I guess they have Quickly as the future starting point guard. I think Andrew probably wants to be a starting point guard in this league too.
Yeah, but he's starting now next to Tyrese Halliburton, and you could make that work.
Just real quickly. I mean, Andrew did say, I think today, and speaking to local reporters here, that he would want to play for Team Canada if possible. So if he were to play for Team Canada, I guess what kind of role do you think Andrew would play?
Yeah, I really wanted Andrew to play for Team Canada last year and get to see him out there next to Shea or potentially Jamal Murray. It's interesting because I don't really like player comps, but Andrew does move somewhat similarly to Jamal Murray, especially when he's manipulating the pick and roll, because both of them like to use like a hop skip hesitation and a float dribble to square themselves to the basket, and he has kind of that same methodical approach as Jamal does. Andrew's pretty sticky at the point of attack. I mean, it's a low bar for the Pacers, but he's their best point of attack defender. He's somebody that they've thrown out there at the end of games against like Cade Cunningham. Cade had like 20 points at halftime, and Andrew really put the clamps on him in the fourth quarter of that game. They've done that with some other matchups this year, and also he's a pretty intuitive off-ball defender as well. He's somebody that he can come and tag a roller and still get out and intercept a skip pass because he has a good read. He has a good read for jump switching, peel switching, nexting, and knowing the spots that he can do that without compromising the defense. And then offensively, he hasn't been necessarily somebody who's going to create his own three-pointer off the dribble. He's only had 3, I think, unassisted threes this year. His shots kind of come and go on a little bit, and then also his handle. He's just dealt with so many injuries this year between the kidney stone, the hyperextended knee, the back soreness, where there were some times where he had some stiffness, and I think that affected his handle to a little bit. But he's a very savvy passer. And if he was able to hit some more of those pull-up shots, I think people would see it even more, because the fact that he can get the degree of potential assists that he has with their numbers are when he's passing out of the pick and roll. Just imagine what that would be if like he was hitting a few more of those shots. So I think he would definitely help Team Canada. I hope that he plays with them this summer. That's going to be a team that I'll keep an eye on. I enjoyed watching him last summer, especially, I don't know what Benedict Matherin's plans are. I think Canada wanted Andrew to play last year, and Andrew was somebody who I think wanted to take the year off to prepare for the season, but he's been outspoken that he wants to do it for the Olympics. So we'll see.
There you go. Okay. Well, Caitlin, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll call you again the next time they're for the Pacers. So
anytime, that later this month.
There you go. Okay, we're going to take another break. I've been your host, Will Lou. You've been listening to The Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. When we come back, Mark Stein.